Hi guys, I thought I would jump on here live today. It's a little impromptu, but that's okay. To talk about some of my favorite dog training myths. So, of course, favorite in quotes there. So, as you may know, we've been doing our free 4-part workshop all about effective service dog training skills for owner trainers. And you can find the link to that classroom in the description of this video. So, if you want to join us for that free workshop, you can get all that information at the link. But of course, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I primarily use clicker training, lots of positive reinforcement. And there are a lot of myths surrounding these things that I get questions about all the time. So I thought today I would just jump on here and kind of bust a few of my favorite dog training myths. So the first one is going to be this idea that all dogs learn differently. So I hear this all the time, and I hear this to justify all sorts of things and all sorts of you hear this all the time, right? Well, all dogs learn differently, so all dogs need different methods or need different this or whatever. But the truth is that all dogs learn the same way. Learning happens through reinforcers and through punishers. Learning happens through consequences, through associations. There are laws that govern how all living animals learn. So the idea that all dogs learn differently is false. However, all dogs are motivated differently, and different methods may work better for different dogs. Now, some people are going to say that I'm splitting hairs there, but really I don't think I am. Because in order for you to be a really good owner trainer, for you to meet the goals you have set for yourself and your dog, to train your dog at this high level, you need to understand the laws of learning and how they apply to every dog across the board, and how to use those laws to teach your dog what he needs to know. Now, all dogs are reinforced differently, or what they find reinforcing is going to be different per each dog. So I've given examples of this all the time, including in that workshop, but some dogs maybe really love hot dogs. Other dogs really love tennis balls. Some dogs don't care about tennis balls at all. Some dogs think hot dogs are gross. I met one dog like that who really would not eat hot dogs. I think it must have been a texture thing. She would not eat them. So all of these dogs learn the same way, but the things they find reinforcing are different. Now, while again, all dogs learn the same way, different methods may work better. So when we talk about learning, when we talk about, let's say, positive reinforcement or clicker training as umbrella terms, these are systems of learning that are underpinned by scientific laws that are happening whether or not you know they're happening. A method is like how I teach a sit. I could think of 5 different recipes for teaching a sit off the top of my head. Okay, and those are methods. But clicker training, operant conditioning, how dogs learn, these things are governed by universal laws. So it may sound like I'm splitting hairs, but in order for you to successfully train your dog to the high level that is necessary for service work, you need to understand these differences. Now, the next myth is that if you use a clicker and treats, you'll have to click and treat forever. And of course, this is not true. So you will not have to click forever. You will want to periodically reinforce forever because our behaviors do need to be reinforced. But as just a quick example of how we work our treats out, when I take a brand new young green service dog in training into public, we may go through a cup of food in 15 minutes. Because I'm reinforcing constantly, just really, really quickly to help my young dog learn how to behave in public. By the time I place that dog with a handler, he's maybe going through that whole cup of food in a whole day out in public. Maybe. And we probably don't even need that many. We don't need them at all. Because if we're going to train a service dog, we need to know they can work without food. Okay, and that's something that I teach all of my students to do, whether you're an online student of mine or an in-person student of mine. However, we do want to reinforce periodically forever, but that's something that, again, is underpinned by those scientific laws that I was saying. So our behaviors have to be upheld in some way, either through some type of consequence. But we do not have to click and treat constantly forever. And if your dog is only listening to you when you have a treat in your hand, then we do need to fix that, right? And we start by making sure you have really good mechanics with your treats. We start by making sure you have good training skills. And then there's a systematic way in which we fade treats out. So once a behavior has been taught, once our dogs do know a behavior, there's a systematic method, or many methods, okay, but there's a system there for fading those treats out. So we do see dogs who fail to work without treats. We do see dogs who only listen to their handlers when a treat is in their hand. But this is not a side effect of clicker training or positive reinforcement training. This is the handler not having all of the knowledge and all of the tools necessary to fade those treats out. So again, there's just a system for that. We don't go from treating every single sit to treating no sits overnight. We do that systematically. And that's something I walk all of my students through. Whether you work with me online or whether you work with me in person, we walk through that step-by-step process together. So then the next one, of course, is I get this a lot. My dog is too old or my dog is too young. Okay, so can my 8-week-old puppy learn how to use a clicker? What about my 5-year-old dog who we've already trained using other methods, or is he too old? Again, the laws governing positive reinforcement are universal. And that doesn't change whether your dog is 8 weeks old, whether your dog is 5 months old, 5 years old, or whether you used a different method or a different, maybe you use punishments, maybe you used a lot of luring, or not that luring is bad. Okay, but maybe you want to switch from luring to shaping, or whatever jump you're trying to make. My point is that, because I can get off on tangents on this, right? My point is that age doesn't really matter. It matters, but not in will clicker training work or will positive reinforcement work, or can I switch my dog over from a different system to this new type of system, okay? It changes the amount of time we train, the types of exercises we might do. So my expectations for a training session with an 8-week-old puppy, very different from an 18-month-old still a puppy, to a 3-year-old dog, especially given how much experience they have. So if that 3-year-old dog has been training with me since he was 8 weeks old versus a 3-year-old dog who's had no training, so my expectations may change. The type of training, specific training methods I use may change. The exercises that I teach will change because I will be adjusting everything for the age and experience level of the dog in front of me. But clicker training works for dogs as young as they start weaning onto solid food up until they are physically not comfortable doing any type of training in old age. Clicker training works and positive reinforcement works across the age spectrum. So that's another thing that we get a lot. Again, I'm going to customize and adjust the exercises, the amount of time that I train, my expectations for age and experience. But I will jump straight to clicker training and positive reinforcement with an 8-week-old puppy. I will also jump straight to clicker training and positive reinforcement with a 3-year-old dog who's never had any training before in his life, or a 3-year-old dog who was trained using some other type of training methods or systems that are different from what I'm going to be currently using. I hope that makes sense. I think I rambled a little bit during that one, so if it doesn't make sense, somebody let me know and ask a question. So then the final myth I want to talk about is clicker training doesn't work for dogs with. So this is where I will get clicker training doesn't work for dogs with low food motivation, or with dogs with high drive, or dogs with fill in your chosen label here. Dogs who are stubborn, dogs who are this, dogs who are that. Again, clicker training and positive reinforcement is governed by a set of universal laws that are going to happen regardless of the method that you are using. Now, whether clicker training works for dogs who are low food motivation depends on a couple of things. Are we using food as your reinforcer? So we don't have to use food as a reinforcer. There are tons of other reinforcers that we can use. Along with that, we can teach our dogs we can increase food motivation in our dogs. Eating a treat is just a behavior. So if I want my dog to eat a treat in any environment and around any distraction, I can teach that just like I can teach any other behavior, like a sit or a down. So I have worked with, and one of the dogs, if you've been following me a while, you'll have heard of Coda. And he was this adolescent doodle who came to me in his adolescence. And he was super picky about what he would eat. He had super low food motivation. He would work for, like if I had hot dogs or steak, he would train for that, but only in low distraction environments. As soon as there was another dog, another person, something to sniff, there was no food that he would take. None. And over the course of a couple of months, we taught him to take food around those distractions. So he went from a dog who would take no food around any distractions to a dog I could work in public around other people and around other dogs for just dog food. And that's just another process. So just as we need to teach our dogs to heel in public, or we need to teach them to sit stay in public, some dogs have to be taught to take food reinforcers in public. And this is something that we can teach. And then we get, well, the dog is too high drive for clicker training, or maybe he's too food motivated. So we get dogs who, as soon as the food is present, they're staring at their handler and they can't do anything or offer behaviors. They're too busy staring at the treat. And a lot of that comes down to experience level of the dog and making sure that they really, really understand how your marker works, that they have to do something in order to get the treat. They may not actually fully understand that if you have a dog who's just sitting there staring at you. And while different breeds are maybe more or less likely to have low food motivation, or more or less likely to be high drive, or more or less likely to fill in the blank, these, again, clicker training, positive reinforcement, it works across the board. It fails when us as handlers and trainers don't have the knowledge or the skills necessary to teach our dogs what we need from them. So one of the things that I remember learning in first in agility, and then when I was doing search and rescue dogs, was always, it's always your fault as the handler. When your dog makes a mistake, it is always your fault as a handler. And in the beginning, at first I agreed with that flatly. And then I started to say, yeah, but obviously sometimes I'm on point and my dog is messing up. Like my skill is solid and my dog is not doing the thing he's learned to do. And that was when it hit me, and I had another trainer explain it to me in other words as well, that it is always our fault as our dog's trainer when they fail. Always. Whether we have messed up in that moment or whether we have failed to prepare them for this moment. So sometimes our dogs mess up, they make a mistake because we actually physically do something. So I may move my hand or in the wrong way, or I may drop a treat on the floor and that distracts my dog, or because depending on the level he's at, maybe that's a huge distraction, right? So I may do something in the moment that causes my dog to make a mistake. But if my dog makes a mistake and I haven't caused that in this moment, then it is still my fault as his trainer. Because somewhere in his training history, I have failed to prepare him for this distraction, or for this level of work, or for whatever we're doing. So it's really important that when we look at training our dogs, we understand that it is rarely the system that is failing us. It is instead our skills as the trainer and the learning history we have given our dogs. And I see that in everything from low food motivation to healing to focus to coming when called. My dog knows this. Obviously he doesn't, because otherwise he would have done it, right? And so what we're seeing sometimes is a mistake of the handler in the moment, and sometimes what we're seeing is a failure to prepare the dog for this moment. All right, so those are my top myths that we get questions about these all the time. We get these as myths thrown at us all the time. But every single one of these myths are things that I have helped owner trainers work through. So when we get all dogs learn differently, right? I have worked with all different kinds of dogs who need all different kinds of methods and reinforcers in order to learn effectively. Because while dogs do learn the same way, they do find different things, that they find reinforcing, okay? And one method may work better for one dog. But again, a method is like a recipe. It is a step-by-step recipe on how to teach something, okay? You'll have to click and treat forever. I help people constantly train their dogs and not have to click and treat forever. There's a system we work through. We teach our dogs not to need the clicks and the treats forever. My dog is too young or too old. I have worked with dogs of all different ages, of all different experience levels and background, and successfully switched them over if the owner wants to switch them over to clicker training and that type of thing. And then, of course, clicker training doesn't work for dogs with fill in your label of choice. And I have worked with low food motivation dogs. I have worked with the high drive dogs, like the Malinois and the Border Collies. I've worked with over my career working with first sport dogs, then search and rescue dogs, and pet dogs with all types of issues from, just stubbornness in quotes to aggression, and then service dogs as well. I have worked with the wide spectrum of personalities and labels. So when our dogs fail, when the system seems to fail us, it is almost always somewhere that we just lack skills or knowledge. And that has happened to me time and time again throughout the course of my career. So then I learn something new, I implement that new thing, and then we get over that challenge, and then the next one pops up. And that's one of the fun things about dog training is you never get to know it all because there's always something new to learn. And there's always a new personality inside of a dog that tests you in a new way. Excellent. So if anybody has any questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, you can definitely still join us for our free workshop. The link to that is in the description of this video. And all of these myths that we have talked about today are directly impacted by the things we talk about in the workshop. So we talk about the base important skills for us to have as trainers so that our dogs can be successful. That's what we're talking about in that workshop. And I will be doing, if you're watching this, on the day that I'm live, so November 5th, I will be live for part 4 inside of our free Facebook group, Train Your Service Dog with Confidence, tonight. Otherwise, that replay will be up afterwards as well. So if you guys have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, I will see you guys later. Have a good day.